It's Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the show and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
I'm Helmut Kremling.
And this is It's Movie Time. In case you want to say, right, you want to see our very high-priced set here falling down. They're the two guys right here. It's essentially a two-hander. It's called Rosewater. And Helmut, briefly, our audience would like to know, what is it about?
Well, first of all, it's a good title, I think. During his sabbatical, Jon Stewart, whose biting wit we all miss, but he kept busy. He wrote a screenplay of a memoir written by Maziar Bahari. The memoir is called "And Then They Came for Me: A Family Story of Love, Captivity, and Survival." Maziar goes to Iran to cover the 2009 elections.
He's an Iranian.
He's a Canadian-Iranian,
Yeah.
and he works for the BBC
And
sometimes
based in London.
right, based in London. He also works for Newsweek.
Now has an assignment to cover the 2009 election,
Right,
which turns out to be dubious
right.
at best, a landslide for his president.
He was interviewed by a mock spy and asked about Iran, and he said, "Well, really, the Iranians are very much like us."
Yes.
And that was a great insult
Yes.
to the regime, to the interrogators who later had him in jail. And it's a statement for tolerance on the part of Stewart and also Bahari, because we call them the axis of evil, and they called us the Satan.
That's right.
And,
Yes.
and Jon Stewart is saying they're not the Satan. We're not the Satan, and they're not the axis of evil. He gets someone to chauffeur him around, but it's not by car, it's by motorcycle. Gael Garcia Bernal, probably the leading Mexican actor, plays Bahari.
Plays an Iranian.
Right, plays an Iranian, even though he's a Latino.
Right.
And he's perfect. He does an excellent job. I really, you can't praise him highly enough. But anyway, the chauffeur, played by Dimitri Leonidas, takes him around on his motorcycle, which reminded me of maybe my favorite Bernal film, Motorcycle Diaries. So it's the second time he rides around on a motorcycle.
Yes.
And he takes pictures of the campaign. It's a very, very contentious campaign with a hardline candidate supported by Khomeini and a moderate candidate supported by a group of educated young people especially, but he has met a lot of support.
Educated at Dish University.
Dish University.
Which is all the dishes on the roof.
Right, the university consists of about 25 TV dishes.
I know. And the authorities, of course, would love to know where they are. Part of the movie is the interrogation in his cell in this prison.
And there was some talk about blaming Stewart's mock interview for causing him to be arrested.
Yes.
But both Bahari and Stewart said, no, they were arresting people before that time, and they already had planned to arrest him before the interview.
Some were saying that this film was a compensation by Stewart to Bahari.
Right.
Because he may have been responsible for his being incarcerated.
But it's not,
no, it was happening before.
Not the case.
Yeah.
He and Bahari were good friends before and also afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. He'd been on his show.
Right. He's been on a show.
Core of the movie, which is the interaction between Bahari and his interrogator, who is called Rosewater for Bahari's not knowing what his name is.
Well, he calls him Rosewater because he uses that perfume made from roses, and that's the beginning of the film shows us how that perfume that is made, which is also used, by the way, in Mediterranean pastry. But they have a strange relationship. it begins by ridiculous charges. They have collected his movie collection from his room and some other notes.
And they call some of it porno.
Right.
It's mainstream movies.
The Sopranos.
Right, they call it porno.
And an Italian indie film and an animated film. They say, well, that must be porno.
And then I think at one point he wanted to know why he was hanging out with this guy Chekhov.
Right. He's on a Facebook group.
Right.
Who read Anton Chekhov, and he says, "Who's this Chekhov character?" They think Chekhov is a fellow spy.
So the Iranians embodied in this interrogator are not terribly bright, not an easy guy, but he hammers away at Bahari intellectually more than physically. There are some physical moments. Mostly, it's hitting him intellectually.
Well, he tries to take his hope away, which he's ordered to do. But he threatens Bahari. He at times he even beats him, and he uses psychological torture
Right.
by saying, "Here you are, and all our other prisoners are having people intercede on their behalf, and no one is mentioning you at all.
Right,
So
right,
you are alone."
Right.
So Bahari almost breaks. And he saves himself by imagining conversations with his father, who was in prison during the Shah's regime.
Which could be considered a bit hokey.
Yeah.
Been used before.
Yeah.
And, they're ghosts who appear to him and he talks to them.
Right.
And I think Stewart pulls it off.
Right.
But I just wonder if there aren't some people who would be put off
Well,
by that.
it's almost Shakespearean, the ghost,
Yes.
ghost of Hamlet.
Yeah. And actually, Stewart changes Bahari's character from what I understand. Bahari was a much tougher guy than Bernal displays him in this film. Much softer in the film than he was in real life. He'd been a seasoned reporter.
I have a list of highlights here of his imprisonment.
I knew you would.
And I'm going to give you the best one.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But not only does he imagine a conversation with his father, he also imagines a conversation with his sister,
Right.
who was imprisoned during Khomeini's time. But
Well, doesn't he, at some point, he dances around.
Yeah. His sister was a big fan of Leonard Cohen's music, and especially the song called "Dance Me to the End of Love."
Okay.
And he hears that in his head, and he begins to dance.
Oh, he says,
And
okay, so he does.
it's probably one of the highlights
Yes,
of the
no,
film.
I agree.
And he dances with the grace and rhythm that only a Latino like my spouse Elizabeth
Like Elizabeth, yes.
could produce.
Good one. There's one point at which the tables turn somewhat when Bahari begins to play with his interrogator. And the best example would be when he tells, suspecting that his interrogator is intrigued by illicit sex. He begins talking about his travels to exotic places for massages, or erotic massages, and keeps putting it on. And the actor, Kim Bodnia, does a wonderful job of not overreacting.
Right. You can just see his eyes, and he says, "This is good information. Tell me more." Right.
Yes, he does. I know.
One can see, I think, Stewart at work here too. This is his type of almost grotesque.
Oh, yes.
Grotesque
Yes.
humor.
Yeah.
Of course, this has happened after the interrogator, Rosewater, has beaten them. But now there's a different phase of this imprisonment. Bernal, as Bahari, has found out that none other than Hillary Clinton has campaigned for his release.
Yes.
And that brings a great deal of hope to him.
Right.
And then his interrogator says, "Your wife is doing too much talking. You want to call her up and tell her to stop?" Well, he had her phone number, and he gave his
Right.
dial
That's
9
right.
for an
That's
outside
right.
thing.
Dial 9.
And he called his wife, but instead of telling her to stop talking, he asked her how she is and that he loves her, and how is the baby that she's carrying doing. And then, of course, the interrogator is disappointed, and so Bahari, by this time, he's overcome his near despair, because he was near despair. He was even contemplating suicide. There was
Sure.
an incident.
And he gave in some points.
Yeah,
to
he gave a. There was a show
scripted
trial, right?
confession.
A show trial which they had learned from the communists, by the way. Yeah.
Yes.
So by this time, Bernal as Bahari is more confident, and he's already heard that Hillary Clinton has talked on his behalf, and he's also makes the wisecrack. But you want me to call her again?
You know, one of the possible limitations, which is true of any docudrama like this, is that we know he gets out of prison. Everybody knows that. Everybody who's sitting
we know
in
the
that
ending,
theater,
yeah.
right? We know the ending. So there are a couple of ways of looking at it. Either there's not enough suspense, or it's so well done that suspense is included in it, even though you know the
He
ending.
was beaten.
Yeah.
The food wasn't very great, although later on in an interview, he's been interviewed constantly, he and Stewart, about this film. He said, well, actually, the food wasn't any worse than airline food.
Well, at one point, however, there's a cake or something with ants all
Yeah,
over
on
it.
it, yeah.
But I would say the cell itself is meticulously clean,
It is cleaned, right.
and I
They
think there
cleaned
may even be a
themselves.
rug.
Right,
for
there's
religious
a
purposes.
rug for prayer.
Right, for prayer.
Right.
And I do like the way in which they grapple with each other intellectually, and how, as you said, Bahari just finally gets it and starts playing on his interrogator.
Right. He's become more confident as he realizes there are people working on his behalf, and he also realizes they're not really doing that much to me anymore. They put me on television. I said what they wanted to say.
Yes.
He I think instinctively knows they're going to release him very soon, and then his captor Rosewater is so frustrated, he starts punching him in the chest, and Bernal as Bahari can't help but laugh.
Yeah, yes.
It's a very amusing amusing scene.
Jon Stewart has done a great job as director and writer. This is his debut. It may not have as much irony as you would like, because you've seen his Daily Show, but he's playing it a little straighter than he would. All right, Helmut. The film is Rosewater. The real star of the film is Jon Stewart, the writer-director. And what grade would you award this?
Not so fast. First of all, I would give Bernal 4 stars for his leading the film.
Was that what I asked? I can listen to him, will you?
And then I'd give 3 stars to Rosewater, played by Kim
I'm with you
Bodnia.
there.
But the film has the actor who he signs papers that he's not going to do anything against Iran. In fact, he's going to be working for them. Of course, he ignores those, and he continues to bear witness to injustice wherever it happens. As Stewart also bears witness to hypocrisy and ignorance on his show, both in social and political sphere. And they both do a very good job, and they continue to do it. So it's great.
Are we getting to the grade, Elizabeth?
grade.
Do you think?
All right, A-.
Oh, very good. And I was teetering, and so I'm going to go with a B+, and only because I think it may be too soft a treatment, and that's just my feeling. Is it's not quite even as hard-nosed as I would have liked it to have been, given the acclaim and the provenance of Jon Stewart. But anyway.